Now, I'd like to take a few moments to introduce our guest speakers. Nice picture. Our first is Senator Phil Pavlov. He was elected in November of 2010 by the people of Lapeer and St. Clair counties to represent them in the Michigan Senate. Senator Pavlov is chairman of the Senate Education Committee and also serves as a vice chairman on the Senate's Natural Resources Committee and Environment and Great Lakes Committee, and is an active member of the Transportation and Regulatory Reform Committees. Prior to serving in the Senate, he completed 3 distinguished terms in the Michigan House of Representatives. Our next speaker is Representative Kevin Daly. Representative Daly is a longtime resident of Lapeer County and was born and raised in Attica Township, just a few miles down the road from where I live. Representative Daly was first elected to the Michigan House in November of 2008. He serves on 4 committees: Agriculture, Labor, Government Operations, and Great Lakes and the Environment. Prior to his election to the House, he served for 24 years as trustee, treasurer, and then supervisor of Attica Township. And our final speaker tonight is Senator Mike Green. Senator Green was elected to the Senate in November of 2010. He currently represents the 31st District, which includes Bay County area counties, and will be, with the recent redistribution, but with redistricting changes, will also represent Lapeer County when he runs for re-election in 2014. He served as a representative for the 84th District from 1995 to 2001, where he worked to strengthen the Right to Farm Act, modernize the Michigan Grain Code, expand natural resources preservation, and enhance the freedoms of Michigan gun owners. Before public service, he was a tool and die maker at General Motors, retiring after 30 years in the skilled trades area. And during that time, he also operated a family farm for 17 years and served as a county commissioner for 8 years. First, I'd like to thank each of you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. I know that you all have busy schedules, and to fit us in is very much appreciated, so thank you for that. What we're going to do tonight to get started is we're going to have each of our guests take about 5 minutes to do an opening statement, and then after that we're going to open to the floor where Liz Gilman and Bill Gutton are going to take your questions. Senator Pavlov, would you like to start?
Well, thank you once again. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's very, I'm honored to be able to start our new year off once again with the Lapeer Tea Party. We do this every year, and it's always great to be back. You know, when we look at the jobs that we all have to do, the jobs that you guys do, for you to get together, get a group together on a Tuesday night in January to come and hear what your legislators are up to, I think that's very important. I was talking to somebody earlier, and there aren't too many opportunities for us to address crowds like this, and you would think that, you know, this should be a common theme across our district. I know that Representative Daly and I routinely hold office hours, whether they be morning or afternoon or evening, because there's a lot of things that happen just west of here that don't always get accurately reported back to the constituents, back to our customers. And so these forums are always very helpful, and I'm always treated with great respect when we come here. So there are so many things that are in play, so many things that happened at the tail end of 2012 that you guys need to be brought up to speed on. You have to try to sort out kind of the rhetoric of what you're hearing on the news and really square it against what Senator Green and I have been working on in the Senate, and obviously Kevin in the House. This aggressive approach that we've taken to government in the last 2 years is not a function of radical Republicans in control. It's more of a function and a recognition that we're really coming out of the flaming last decade, where we lost over 800,000 jobs in the state of Michigan, where we bumped up against 14% unemployment, where we were the only state in the country that lost population. We were the only state in the country after the census to lose a very powerful seat in Congress. That has implications to everybody in the state of Michigan. It has implications on what kind of federal funding we receive, on per capita, our transportation, our votes on critical issues that mean a lot to the people of the state of Michigan. We've lost one vote in Congress, and you can argue where it went. It's somewhere down south where it's warm, most likely. So we continue to take a look at what we can do within the borders of the state of Michigan to be able to take care of our own business. And I'll tell you, if they would look from Washington to the last 2 years of activity in the Michigan legislature, they would clearly understand there is a way of dealing with the economic realities. You know, when Governor Snyder was elected, we took a very aggressive approach to fix what was wrong with Michigan. Governor likes to call reinventing Michigan. Well, that's what we did, because I stood in this room as a candidate in 2009 and talking about the virtues of eliminating the Michigan business tax, start talking about things that are going to put people back to work again. We've been able to do that. You know, when I was in the House, you know, my last 3 years in the House included 2 government shutdowns under Democratic control. That wasn't going to happen when we moved in 2011 with a new group in town. What do? We took a serious look at our budget. We looked at our balance sheet. We saw that we had $2 million of fund balance in the bank. Enough to run state government for about 30 minutes. Your local school districts and municipalities typically have 5 times that much money sitting in their fund balance in terms of reserves. We also knew that we had to address what was arguably the worst tax policy in the United States of America with the Michigan business tax. We went right to work on that very early. What do? We came up and presented a balanced, responsible budget in the month of June. Hadn't been done that way in nearly 30 years. We followed that up with all the necessary reforms that required very disciplined spending and an eye on the long-term liabilities that are just pulling down on the state of Michigan. And since then, we've since balanced our second budget on time. We've taken a look at the legacy costs that are strangling all of the taxpayers in this room and across the state of Michigan. And we've taken that opportunity under aggressive reforms to build up our rainy day fund. We have nearly $550 million in a state savings account today. We have addressed tens of billions of dollars in long-term unfunded liabilities by restructuring our retirement systems, both on the public side and with our education system. There's still a lot of work to do. You will hear a week from tomorrow, the governor will take the stage and he will give his State of the State address to the people of the state of Michigan and laying out his vision for what he would like to accomplish. And as legislators, we'll be listening. We will have our own ideas. Believe it or not, we are independent thinkers. So we will have the people in our district, my Senate 25th district that has about 270,000 constituents in it, we'll listen and we'll understand the plan, and then we'll go to work. We'll go to work on trying to get the consensus that we need. I know there'll probably be a lot of questions later on, and I would rather use that time to address your concerns. So, who's ever up next? Senator Green. Mike Green. I've had the honor of serving with Mike. Mike is one of our more interesting characters in the Michigan Senate. I say that in a good way. So,
well, I'm kind of new to probably every one of these. Nobody knows who I am. Who's that guy? Where did he come from? What's he doing? So, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a little bit of, maybe not extra time, but a little bit of time and just let you know who I am first. What drove me into this terrible occupation to want to work with the legislature and try to make our state better. So a little bit about me. First of all, my wife Paula is with me tonight. Paula, raise your hand. She's been my right arm for a long time, and now she's lost her left arm. She had a stroke about a month and a half, or a year and a half ago, but she's coming back. It's just taking a little bit of time, but we're working together on it. Paul and I raised 5 children, and we have 20 grandchildren. And it makes it a very lively place around our house at Christmas time. My oldest daughters and her husband are missionaries in South Africa, Baptist missionaries. They have 4 kids. I have my oldest son lives next door. He's a log home builder. My middle son is a Baptist minister who left a church in New York to come and be the principal of our Christian school in Juniata, and he's doing that right now, which is just an ambassador. And my youngest daughter married a pastor, so she's active in their church at Clive, and my youngest son, Peter, is also in the log home industry. But they've given us 20 grandkids, and we're proud of them. And we love them to death. It's busy at Christmas. A little bit about my history. I am a tool and die maker. I served 30 years with General Motors in tool and die. Probably if I look back at my career, probably would not have been my first choice as I look back. But it paid the bills and helped me get our kids through school, and it was a worthy occupation, and it also helped me to raise our kids. I was also a farmer. To get my fun out of life while I was working in the shop, I bought a farm and to raise my kids on. And probably the biggest thing I wanted to do was teach my kids how to work. And I think I did. They're all hard workers and they're doing well. None of them are living with me again like some are. But like a whole lot of other guys, I worked in the shop and farmed, and first thing you know, all my shop money went to the farm. And then I tell people I farmed till I ran out of money, which isn't unusual either. Ran for county commissioner and served 8 years, and then decided to run for state rep. Then I put a campaign together and ran for the state house. Represented Huron and Tuscola County for 6 years, then I was term limited. And after that, I had to sit out 2 years and I ran for the Senate. Now the Senate was a little bit different district than my House district. It was a little bit more heavier Democrat, and my campaign there, without discussing the whole campaign, I kind of got blistered, you might say. 38 to 38 to 62. So I kind of took a drubbing, and after that, my wife and I figured, we're done. We're all out of politics. That was kind of the Lord saying, you've had enough. And so I sit out for 8 years, and then during that time I started a small business with my boys. When we first, my younger boy got in, I got into working in the log home business with my older boy, started another business, and then he got in with me, and so that's what I did for about 8 years. And about 8 years later, the call came knocking, a couple calls came to me and said, hey, Senate seat's open again, you want to run for the Senate? I said, no, I'm done. I don't want that anymore. My wife was shaking her head. And then next day, another call. From Lansing said, hey, Senate seat's open. You look like the guy that could win the seat. Polls look pretty good. Absolutely not. I'm done. I don't want anything to do with it anymore. And then the next day, another call came, a little higher up, and said, hey, we really need you to run. We need somebody for that seat. Again, I knew it was a heavy Democratic seat, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to put a campaign together and lose again. And I looked over my wife after I hung up and kind of smiled, and she said, that's a pretty big decision you had to make there, wasn't it? And I said, yeah, it was a big decision. She said, don't you think you ought to ask the Lord what we ought to be doing instead of you making that decision? And that kind of changed gears. And that after I did seek his advice, I threw my hat in the ring and ran. So why did I run? I believe in small government. I believe the state government and federal government is too big. I don't know if you know this or not, but 40% of our whole state budget is federal money. The federal government runs each and every one of us. And that was another one of the things. But the thing that really got me involved in politics the first time was the life issue. I'm very pro-life. I'm a strong advocate of life, and those are some of the things you never change. There was a number of issues last year that we dealt with. And Phil's talked about a few, I'm sure. Representative Daly is going to talk about a few. Let me talk to you about two of them, if I may. I am a strong Tea Party guy. When I decided to run, I told my group that I was a Tea Party guy before there was ever a Tea Party. And I was one of the top conservative voters in the House. But after you get a drubbing like I did the first time, you look back and see, well, maybe this district's a little bit different, and maybe I ought to reconsider some things. Well, I wasn't willing to do that. I ran for office because I thought that was the right thing to do. But during my campaign, I made a decision right off the bat and I made it clear and plain at a Tea Party meeting that I would support right to work. Knowing it was a snap decision that I made, didn't think it out. Later I sit back and thought it out a little bit more, looked at the implications of that, and felt like that I probably ought to reconsider my support of right to work. And so I did. I reconsidered it, I spoke about it during the campaign, I spoke about it at Tea Party meetings. It was a political decision, it was not a hard decision. And after I got elected, I really never expected to have to vote on it. But I made my statement, I'm not going to support it, and here I am. So, as we went on for 2 years, nobody ever expected the vote to come up. After the last election, where Proposal 2 went down so heavy, everybody said, well, all right, it's time, we're going to vote for it. Looking back on the decision that I made, I would not support it. I told my caucus that if you need me, I'll support it. But I told people during the whole campaign for the last 2 years I wouldn't. And they said to go ahead and not vote for it, and so I didn't vote for it. Could I have voted for it? Sure, I could have voted for it. The reason they rather I didn't vote for it was because we're expecting some major recalls after that vote. And probably my district was one of the heaviest union districts in the state, and they knew for sure that we'd have a campaign there. And they really didn't want to spend the $1 million that it was going to take to defend my seat in a recall. I mentioned this to the folks that I met with last week, the leaders of the Tea Party, and I said, I'm sorry that it happened this way. I know that's a big issue with you folks. I do know it is. But the bill passed. Someone asked me, well, how can we ever trust you again? And I said, well, all you can do is look at my record. I've got a list of things I can rattle off here to you, of things I supported, things that you cared about, things about cutting our salary, cutting our benefits, legislators, things that I knew was important to a lot of people in the district. But I didn't vote for right to work, and that was kind of the reason why. The other one issue is early in 2011, the health exchange was a big deal in the Senate. I knew the governor, it was something the governor really, really wanted. But I also knew it was something that if we didn't pass it, the federal government would. And I also knew that, and I wasn't sure about the funding. So as it came down to it, I went ahead and voted for the health exchange. If I had that vote back, I probably wouldn't vote for it again. But I did then. It's on my record, here I am. I do not support Obamacare. No way do I support Obamacare. And you know, we could probably sit down and debate all night about what everything's going to happen with Obamacare. It was at that point then that the courts had not ruled. I supported that. I would not support it today. In fact, me and another time up, okay, let me finish this one and I'll sit down. Me and another fellow just stopped $31 million from being appropriated of Obamacare money in the Appropriations Committee. It didn't pass. The House held it up, so that didn't happen. But I wanted to share that with you. Two of the votes that you probably could hold against me for the rest of my life, and that's the way they came down. So I will sit down and let Kevin go.
Thank you. You know, senators are known to be a little longer-winded than representatives are, so I'll wrap this up rather quickly. But no, it's a pleasure and an honor for me to be here tonight, and thank you folks all for your support in the last election. It was greatly appreciated. You know, I'm coming up. I'm an old timer now. I've been in there 4 years. I'm on my last term, believe it or not. So with term limits the way they are, that's the way it works today. We just get folks in there and just get you so you're figured out and you know what you're doing. And guess what? You're all done. You're out the door. So that's the bad thing about term limits. We've had that discussion before. But as you folks know, just let's jump back, as Phil mentioned a little bit. 4 years ago when I first came in, Phil and I were seatmates. We sat right next to each other on the floor, and we sat through some very poor administrative runnings of the state of Michigan. We sat there, you know, they talked about the countdown clock. I actually had a computer sitting on the front of my desk the last few days of September counting down the deadline when they shut the clock off in the House office building because midnight came and it was October 1st. So they just shut the clock off so we can continue to vote on things trying to pass the budget. That was the way things were run in the previous administration. To be perfectly honest with you, what I see going on in Washington is very similar to what went on in Michigan for the 8 years prior to this legislature we got there today. So, you know, I'm proud to come in and say, you know, one thing that I ran on 4 years ago and I ran on 2 years ago is the Michigan business tax. Over the last 2 years, we got rid of the Michigan business tax. That was a huge thing for the state. We've balanced our budget both years in May instead of October. You know, we've done what we said we were going to do. You know, whether you like the governor or whether you don't like the governor, whether you like what we've done or whether you don't like what we've done, this guy is truly, I mean, the people out there are screaming. I'll tell you what, he's ticked off as many Republicans as he has Democrats. He's ticked them both off. So that to me says this guy's doing what he needs to do what's right. You know, Senate Bill 59, Senator Green's gun bill, he vetoed it. He told us the reason he vetoed it. You know, I think Sandy Hook really had nothing to do with it. I think he was going to veto it anyway. I think he had issues with it, and he admitted that right up in the beginning. He's an honest person. He's straightforward. He tells us the way he feels. Some of the things we've done, I know a lot of people are upset with. I know there's going to be some questions about the tax on pensions. Was that the right way to do it? I don't know, but you know what? We balanced our budgets, and we did it. Are there some problems with that? Yeah, but you know, I'm sure the questions are again the fact that the way we set that up and why we set it up the way we did. And you know, when you're making sausage, as they say we do in politics, sometimes you have to do that. When it comes to the gun laws, I've been meeting in the last week. I supported Senate Bill 59, and my wife's a school teacher. You guys all know that, I think. But I would prefer that the guy that's coming in there to cause ruckus in my wife's school doesn't know which one of those teachers has a gun. Because you know, I never thought about the fact till I met some deep concern with that from some high school teachers. And I was only thinking about grade schools. I was thinking about high schools. There's a lot of difference between a second grader that weighs 50 pounds and a 200-pound 10th grader and a small teacher. So, you know, some of the high school concerns in guns is a little different than grade school concerns in guns. And I met with a teacher last week and he's a hunter, he's a supporter of gun rights, but he vehemently opposes guns in schools. And he's got his reasons for that. So I think our job is to look at both sides. One thing we certainly don't want is we want the doggone federal government telling us what we can do. We need to do it in our state. We don't need to do it. don't need to talk anymore. You know, well, just real quickly, I'll mention right to work. I want to tell every group that I can this, you know. We heard the news, you know, I've been there for 4 years, so we saw the protests. We saw the first Tea Party event in Lansing where they said there was 2,000 people there. And then we saw the protests from some of the union folks where there was 6,000 people there. And I got pictures out of my office window that show the numbers of people at both events, which was about the same amount of people. So it's kind of unusual that the media counts them differently in certain ways. And then a few weeks ago when we did Right to Work, I'm telling you that the reports were out that there was 12,000 people in Lansing, and I can tell you there was not 12,000 people in Lansing. Number one, I talked to the state police when we were leaving, and I said, you know, looking out those windows, there's not 12,000 people there. They have pictures from the 4th floor of the Capitol building with the Tea Party event, and granted, there was a couple thousand people in the Capitol building that day, so there was probably more people there, but the event out the windows from the Capitol building from the Tea Party event and from that event last week was about the same amount of people outside. So we're guessing 6,000 to 7,000 people were there last week, and the state police agreed with me when we left that that's probably they figured was really there. The majority of those people were good people. They were there because they didn't like Right to Work. There's, you know, when you get 6,000 people together, there's bound to be some problems that happen, and there was some things that happened that shouldn't have happened there. But the majority of those people there were good people that were really concerned about Right to Work. And I don't know if that concern was justified or not. Personally, I voted in favor of it. I don't think it was justified. I had a town hall meeting here in Lapeer. Some of you folks were there, I think. I was told when I went in the day that we were going to vote, I was told by some folks, well, you had a town hall meeting. You can't vote in favor of this. You saw 95% of the people there were opposed to Right to Work. And I looked right at this person and I said, so you want me to make my decision based on what happened at a town hall meeting? You really want me to make my decision based on that? Because I can make a town hall meeting, do whatever I want to make it do, depending on how you set it up. So I based my decision on what I thought were the facts. I asked those folks for the facts, and nobody could instill in me that it was the wrong thing to do, so that's why I voted the way I voted. But with that, we'll, I don't know who we turn it over to now. Is Liz coming up? Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm sure there are a few of you out here who have some really important questions to ask, and this is the perfect place to do it. We just ask that you stay peaceful. One of the benefits of meeting in a church is that it's relatively, you know, a common ground, right? So let's just try to stay peaceful. I know some of this is very controversial, but we're very grateful that these fine gentlemen have joined us this evening, so we would like to respect their time. And let's all just try to keep it short, and one question per person. I'm going to be standing over here, and then Bill Dupton is going to be a floater around for anybody else who has a question. So anybody who wants to ask a question, just come right over here or see Bill, and please just address it to whoever you have the question for, and Phil will let you hold this. And I'll take this. Hello? Okay. So whoever is ready to go with their important question, we're going to start with this man right here in the back.
My name is Mark Gillum, and I have a question for all of you. What has been legislated to protect citizens from violent criminals that sets us apart from, other areas? It seems to me there's a lot of violent criminals moving into my neighborhood that should never be free.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think when you take a look at the state budget, and Senator Green is on the appropriation side, it's the fastest growing part of state government. I can tell you that when I came into the State House in 2005, I championed Jessica's Law. If you remember, Jessica Lunsford was a 9-year-old girl down in Florida who was kidnapped, held against her will for nearly 3 weeks in a trailer park in the Tampa area. She was brutally raped and drugged. I connected up with her father, and he was crisscrossing the United States trying to implement Jessica's Law, which was really addressed to repeat sex offenders. And so for the very first time in Michigan, we got the judges in the state of Michigan to agree to mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines for repeat sex offenders. And so today in Michigan, because of that legislation, specifically toward the repeat child offenders that we know are going to be a continual problem in society, we are now locking them up for a minimum of 25 years and then lifetime sentence for repeat offenders. But we got a long way to go. you look at where Lapeer is right now, and you can only look to the west where, you know, we're not far from Flint, and we know that the problems is one of the most violent cities in Michigan. Where I am in St. Clair Township, 50 miles from the city of Detroit. And then you go to our north, where Saginaw is. The problem that we have, and I think Mayor Dave Bing summed it up very well last week when he said, lost respect for human life in our society. And you can point to all the ills around us. The reality is that you know, our laws and our systems and our incarceration system is a big ticket item in the state of Michigan. So what are we doing? We're working on looking at sentencing guidelines. We're looking at programs where we separate the people that we're mad at from the people that we're afraid of. And I think that, you know, I come from county government where we looked at sentencing guidelines and pretrial services to be able to better identify who the bad guys are. I mean, are we really locking up, you know, parents that are behind in their child support today? Or is there a better way of dealing with that problem where we can utilize our very valuable local county jail space? You know, we've had to close down prisons in the state of Michigan just because of cost, because of the massive dollars involved in incarceration. But, you know, I think that you're going to have that conversation about, you know, many communities have become very creative with mental health courts, with drug courts, in a way to get involved earlier maybe and separate out the, you know, the worst. But, you know, we have that problem in Michigan, and it's probably one of our largest budget challenges. So that's a great question.
You want to also answer?
Yeah,
please.
that was a good answer, but...
Yeah, I'd like to hear from all.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, you know, we can pass all the laws there are on the book, especially we can pass gun laws. We can pass all kinds of laws. When I was in the House from 95 to 2000, we passed minimum sentence laws. And if you did 5 crimes, you were in for life. Next 8 years, they took them all off. I mean, it seems like that happens continually. One administration will pass very conservative laws, the next administration will change them back. So it gets frustrating to us that we're passing laws, number one, the Michigan business tax, that 10 years ago we voted out, but it came back again. So our prisons are full, our jails are full. Every jail in the state is adding on, bunking on, renting out space from other places, and it's still not enough. I think a whole lot of the problems are we're creating these crimes ourselves, especially with the things that we've been talking about for the last 2 or 3 weeks about the video games, and I did see that Glenn Beck show the other day with Lieutenant Colonel. It really impressed me. But so many things we are doing to ourselves. We're making criminals. But so in order to pass more laws, we got to have more prison space. And I think Phil said it right, was we got to find out what type of people do we lock up? People we're mad at or people that we're scared of? And I don't think we're there yet.
Personally, I don't know that locking more people up settles the problem. I think the problem starts all the way back at a level of family values and when we start out with what we learn at home. The problem we've got with the kids in schools, you know, the problem we've got in schools with parents that I don't know if you have seen this. I think that was on Facebook. There's a cartoon out there that shows a 1960 parent standing behind the desk with a student with their kid, and the teacher is behind the desk, and the parents and the teacher are looking at the kid shaking their finger. Why'd you get this grade? And the other side, that was in 1960, and today it shows the parents and the student yelling at the teacher, why'd you give me this grade? And the kid's over there smiling, you know. It's a problem that we got to fix. And we've got serious problems socially in this country with the fact that, you know, between abortions and between the good people out there only wanting to have 1 and 2 kids apiece, but yet the slime of the earth is having multiple kids and living off the system, and we're creating what's going to happen in another 20, 30 years if that continues. There's already almost more of those type of people than there are the good people, the good working families. I think somehow we've got to get this social problem fixed in our state, and I think that helps take care of it. But you've got the violence that comes into play with violent games we've got that we talked about up here earlier. Some of these video games that these kids play today where you actually get more points for killing more people. I mean, come on, we need to get rid of that stuff. We've got these wonderful actors out there that are all against gun violence, but then they create all these movies and videos that are the most violent things. Movies that are the most violent movies out there, killing people and everything. So we just got a whole problem of our society out there we've got to fix, and I don't know the answer to it.
All right, we've got a question here.
My name is Rob Allahan, and I'd like to congratulate Kevin and Phil for their hard work in the Senate, because I looked at your voting, how many times you were working and voting for bills and working in the House, compared to us, a representative and a senator down in Detroit. I think they had a total of 34. Well, representative down in Detroit had something like 463 missed votes. So I appreciate your work. So you should be congratulated for that. But my question, I have many questions about healthcare and many other things. But the one question I want to ask is on retirement funds. The governor is at 6%. I believe that's what the percentage is for the retirement fund, or what IRAs or whatever. I don't have a whole grasp of that. But my whole idea on taxes is, rather than charging, like the state charging 6%, why don't the state go and say, okay, we're going to only do 3%? I would think that would be more enticing for people to move into Michigan to start businesses and living in this great state and doing many things, rather than charging such a high rate on the percentage. Also, it will provide more people to pay taxes. You won't find, I believe, you won't find so many people that will try to get away from 6% versus maybe like a 3%. Because Reagan did this. And the only reason Reagan's policies failed was because Congress turned around and spent a whole lot of money. That was the reason why his program didn't really work, because Congress turned around and spent a lot of money. And I'm wondering, why couldn't we suggest to the governor saying, well, 6%, why don't we just drop it down to 3% to entice more people to pay taxes and more people to come to Michigan? So, that's any of them. I don't care for any particular person.
I guess I don't know that I have an answer. I guess it's, I consider that more like a statement that I don't disagree with it.
I guess it would be more of a statement. Well, why wasn't there an approach to that, rather than, why couldn't we say 3%? Why can't you go back and look at that law again and just change it down and bring it down further? Is there a way of doing that?
Well, there's always a way to change laws. Sure, did you want to talk on that, Phil?
I can say something real clear. You identified where we're going on, at least on the income tax side. When we made the changes and eliminated Michigan business tax, which was a very complicated, cumbersome, very expensive tax, we changed to a income tax in the state of Michigan. We did that in 2011, and last year we lowered that rate. The rate is 4.35% on income tax in the state of Michigan. But just in October, we began ratcheting that down. It's now 4.25. And so we're scheduled to go to 3.9% over the next 5 years. And it was actually the House that led that initiative to start bringing that rate down. And the idea fits exactly what you're trying to say. Lower the rate, have it across the bigger base so that we can encourage that growth. And we're starting to see evidence of that in the state's economy. And that's going to continue to go down a 1/10%. Now, you don't think a 1/10% means a lot to you guys and your household. Well, here's what it means to the state of Michigan. It was a $100 million tax cut to every worker in the state of Michigan just on October 1st of this year. So.
All right. Thank you. All right, we've got another question here.
Last
April or maybe March, Phil and I met regarding taxing people's pension. And of course, he gave me a politician answer. Long and dragged out. She wants a question now. But anyways, I have seen since then my attorney and my accountant, and they've laid it out in layman's terms. If you're born at 53 or after, the first 20,000 you're taxed. But before 53, say 52 or before, it's after 20,000. Gentlemen, that is age discrimination as far as I'm concerned. And they both agreed. But again, nobody's going to challenge it. Another thing about the taxing of pensions, you did it on what the basis of what the people that are working right now, the regular working people, you taxed it the same. You should have taxed it half. No, you got greedy and you took the whole part. You know, I talked with Mike Lefebvre at the Mackinac Center, and he approached the governor and showed them they could save $500 million. Out of that savings, how much did the governor look at and make the cuts? Zero. None. So it seems to me that the government wants to keep taking away from the people and not give them nothing back when they deserve it. And when you change the rules at the end of the game, it's not fair. Don't you all agree? That's not a fair thing. I think that should be addressed when you go back and look at getting that changed. One more thing. Can you guys sponsor a bill regarding labeling of GMO food products?
Yes.
Doing out in California and other places? We need that.
Yeah. Well said.
Here.
I just want to mention the fact, you know, whenever you do something like we did with the pension tax, there's going to be losers. I mean, when that legislation first started, there was not going to be any exemptions for anybody. Everybody's going to pay it. And so this was it wouldn't have made any difference. Say, for instance, if we would have did it that way, it would have started everybody right off the bat. If we would have said everybody gets a 50% break that's already retired, then what about that guy that retires tomorrow? He's not going to get any break. So there's always going to be, no matter what you do, but it had to go through a long process over there to get the agreement to come up with what we ended up with. I argue with people all the time when they say it's a senior pension tax, because in all reality, we exempted the seniors. The main reason why I supported that tax, and I might have told this group this before, but it's a very simple analogy. You say, for instance, my daughter's married and has 3 little kids and lives in a house, and her husband are both working full-time, making $80,000 a year, paying 4.35% in taxes to the state of Michigan. And right across the road from them lives 2 retirees, making maybe $70,000 a year, but not paying a penny in taxes. They can be 52 years old. And I couldn't see where that's fair. I don't think that's fair. So that was the reason why I supported it. I looked at the fact that I think a pension tax, you're using all the systems, and the problem we got is people aren't retiring at 67 and 70 years old anymore. They're retiring at 52 and 50. Some people retire. My father-in-law retired at 48 years old. So that's the reason why I supported it. But with that, I don't know if you had something to respond to that, or if you want to do it.
Kevin, it's based on age. Never before in the history of this state, I think it was back in the 70s, they stopped taxing pensions. Has ever been based on age. That's the key. Treat everybody fairly. Don't age discriminate.
So you would have been better off with it, you say, if we just did it.
I'd be better off if someone was born in 52 or 1951 being taxed the same as me. Okay? You got the piece of paper, and so did Mike. I gave you Phil last year. He used it for the backside. He used it for notes.
Let me just say one thing, that tax cut was passed in the late 90s. Under John Engler, I was part of voting for that part too. But I think probably each one of us voted for something that could have been a whole lot worse if we had to negotiate it down and held our vote back. There was a lot of consternation amongst all of us. But the thing that we all campaigned on was Michigan business tax. Michigan business tax. We've got to cut the Michigan business tax because of jobs. We've got to have jobs, and we're not there yet. But I don't know if we all remember 2 years ago, every door I knocked on was, what are you going to do about jobs? What are you going to do about jobs? Every event I was at, it was all about jobs. And so to go down there and vote for something that we thought was going to improve jobs, they happened to throw another little glitch on it. And they stuck us with that in the same bill. And so I think that's probably what caught all of us. But they wanted a whole lot more than what we ended up negotiating down.
Since you were picking on me at the beginning, let me jump in here. And you're one of the most frequent visitors to my office hours. We've had this conversation. The reason I give you a political answer is because this is politics. This is what we do. We're politicians. But the point that I want to make with this, and Senator Green touched on it, when that plan was introduced, it was planned, just for everybody in the audience, pension income in the state of Michigan has been taxed forever. Okay? So what the legislation did over the years is we exempted dollar amounts. And so before we changed it, there was a $40,000 personal exemption against your income. So the first dollar after $40,000 was taxed at 4.3%. The governor proposed in 2011 the complete elimination of that exemption. So Michigan income tax on pension income still in place. Now, that was a $960 million tax increase. And we began working immediately to reduce that down. We reduced that down by $650 million, and I passed that information along to you at one of our earlier office hours. And the reason that we did that is look at the reality. Where we are in Michigan today, the population that's 65 and older is going to grow by 24% in the next 15 years. Right? It's demanding, okay, whatever. Well, here's what this means, is that the workforce and the taxpayers supporting a larger segment of the population that isn't contributing to the well-being and services of the state of Michigan will drive you to bankruptcy. And so we looked at it and we said, after 67, you would be exempt, your income would be exempt. You know, below that, for that next base, we would still allow you a $20,000 exemption. And for those who have been fortunate enough to be able to retire, their pension income, whether it was from working for the state police or UPS or the sale of a family farm that pays your retirement income, everybody needs to be treated the same. And you're treated at the same rate as we're taxing unemployment benefits in the state of Michigan. And the notes that he did give me, I did put notes on those, Mark, to go back and double check the things. So happy to talk more about it. Come to the next office hours and try to clear it up, but I don't think we're going to get into an age discrimination. And by the way, the federal government will be looking at indexing Medicare very soon. So if you're receiving it at 62, look for that to move to 65, look for that to move to 67. Not because we have this anxiety and this animosity toward retirees. It's the simple fact that 20 years ago, you had 7 active employees paying for every one retiree on Social Security. It's now 3 actives supporting every single worker on Social Security. You will run out of math, you will run out of dollars, and that's an economic reality.
Okay, we have a couple of questions here in the back.
Yes, thank you gentlemen for coming out and meeting with us tonight. And I know both you, Phil and Kevin, I know very well, and Mr. Green, we met a couple times. And my question coming up is kind of near and dear to my heart, a lot of folks. We've made a lot of changes in our education. I know the governor's going to be introducing, I think probably at his speech next week, but what kind of direction do you think we're going to go? And the reason I ask is for me, as a parent, as a conservative, whatever we decide is the cost to fund a child for K-12. I think that cost should be the same if it's Lapeer County or Detroit or Mackinac, wherever, instead of the swing that we've got. And I understand we're making amends on there, so I'm not knocking anybody, but what do you think, what are your insights as what we might expect coming up this year in regards to education funding for K-12?
If I may, only though I know that the funding is hardly not much more than last year's. I'm going to refer to Phil. Phil's our education expert. He's been right on top of education since I've been in the Senate, and he can probably give you a better outlook. Funding, I can tell you, it doesn't look like there's going to be any more money for schooling fund than there was last year, which is a problem.
I think the direction that we've been trying to push in equitable funding and you'll see these communities, Birmingham and the more affluent communities are getting more tax dollars ultimately to educate a student there. There's always been some proposal they went into place trying to get a smoothing, a 2x formula for every dollar that comes in for new revenue for school aid, that the communities that are getting lower get $2 for every community that gets $1. It's an evening out system, but I think where you're really going to see it, it's going to move more toward a formula of truly having the money follow the student. And when you can get to that point, it's going to force the economic vitality of local school districts to compete for that student's dollar and that portion of foundation allowance. We have a very complicated funding formula, but when we talk about what's happening in school education funding, look at the sources that we fund education with. Sales tax, Michigan income tax, local property taxes, you know, look around your community. And so you see this downward pressure on that fund. We hope that we can at least maintain the same level. We've worked really hard to drive efficiencies. The 20% copay on insurance premiums has been it's been a great tool for local school districts. I talked a little bit earlier about reforming the retirement system. That is a millstone around the neck of public education that can lead it to bankruptcy if we don't make those necessary changes on employee contribution into a retirement system that's outdated, underfunded, and headed for the ditch. So we work on trying to give those tools to the local districts so that they can maximize their budgets. And it's an equity issue, and every year we have that same equity battle. But I think you'll start to see, it might not be this year, next year, but the trend will be money follow the student. So wherever your student goes, we've opened up opportunities for cyber education, dual enrollment at our community colleges. So that kid gets $7,000 in his or her backpack at the beginning of the year. They go out and they purchase the kind of education that fits them, whether it's career technical education, dual enrollment. So we continue to beat down those barriers on choice and options.
Okay, we have a question here.
This has got a question for Senator Pavlov. I'm asking you this as one of your constituents and as a registered professional civil engineer in the state of Michigan. So I need to put your transportation hat on for a minute. This topic's been near and dear to me for many, many years. It has to do with road performance. There's a lot of confounded issues that go into the performance of a road. But lately all I see is the efforts by the government to increase funding for the repairs of the roads. And I don't see much effort on the Michigan Department of Transportation's side of things to find out what the actual root cause is that is causing the degradation of the roads over time prematurely. And what are we going to do to solve that problem before we go before the people get more money? In other words, we have a spending problem with respect to roads due to the poor performance. I don't know if it's engineering, construction, the assumptions that they make during the engineering process, the loading of the trucks. We have the highest load limits in the United States, one of the few states that has that. I also know that 2/3 of those trucks are gravel haulers based on the Michigan Department of Transportation's own statistics. So we're basically tearing apart the roads that we're building as we carry the gravel across the roads to rebuild them. The benefit of these higher loads is typically for the logging, mining, agricultural, and steel hauling industries. You would think that we could distribute those loads among a larger number of trucks. I know it would raise costs, but for instance, with the automakers and coil stock, we could certainly put that cost across the nation because we send our cars everywhere. We shouldn't have to bear the burden of the cost of the roads to facilitate their hauling of these heavy loads. Whereas up north, with the agricultural, lumber, and mining industries, that's a different bag, if you will, but most of the roads that we have problems with are down here in southeast Michigan. We have a high rate of freeze-thaw cycles, we have poor drainage, this goes on and on. Specifically, what is the government doing to identify the root causes and come up with strategy to improve the roads, not just from a funding perspective?
That's a lot, and it's a very timely question. I think when you take a look at the root cause of where we're at in infrastructure, you only have to look at the way that we're taxing our road system, what we're using to pay for the roads. And we pay 18 cents a gallon on every gallon of gas to go strictly dedicated to highway construction and reconstruction and maintenance. Now,
I don't want to hear about funding, I know what.
I know you don't, but I'm going to tell you to you anyway, because that's the root cause of the problem. The funding dollars, as our vehicles, this is the point, as our vehicles become more efficient, as our economy has lapsed into a recession, we are literally collecting less of a percentage to fund our roads. So at 18 cents a gallon, if you're driving a car that gets 25 miles a gallon versus a car that used to get 15 miles a gallon, our fleet has become more efficient, and the bottom line is revenues coming in has impacted the amount of work that we can do. Now, here's what we're doing about it. I've been on the transportation committee since I was elected to the House. You being an engineer, you understand the concept of design, build, and warranty. Okay? There's nobody, you as an engineer are not going to hold yourself responsible for a warranty on a road for a contractor to come in there and build the road to the specifications unless you can warranty it. So the trend nationally has been rebuilding our infrastructure with a design-build system that offers a 25 or 30-year warranty on the serviceability of that road. These are ideas that have been tried in the state of Michigan, and they continue to show some promise. But the reality is that you don't want to talk about the dollars, but it's the fact. For every dollar that we send to Washington on our federal gas tax, you're only getting about 92 cents back, while other states are getting $1.10 back on that investment. And so we have to continue to fight in Lansing, and not only in Lansing, but in Washington. When I mentioned that we were the only state in the country to lose a vote in Congress, well, that's a function of it, because we're not as powerful to be able to go out and fight for what you have paid in the form of federal tax gas to the federal government in a return. The other thing that comes, I mean, we've gone through this whole conversation about the maximum weight load. In Michigan, you have 160,000 pounds spread out over 11 axles. My family business used to haul coiled steel. You go back to the time when those laws became Michigan law, it was while we were building, when we were the arsenal of democracy, the heavy industrial base, we were moving steel and gravel and iron and tanks and airplanes. Now, you could make the argument that all of that weight spread out over 11 axles is dangerous or has a severe impact, negative impact to our roads. But you could also say that splitting that up over 2 trucks would add congestion, delays, and further damage of 2 trucks going down the road. So we've had those conversations. We've looked at the funding. The point that I bring up about the road funding is because what we've done over the last 2 years to strengthen Michigan's bond rating, you're going to hear the governor come out next Wednesday and put forth a very specific plan for dealing with our crumbling infrastructure. And you can't take the dollars out of the equation. It will be part of the conversation going on, and I think what you'll hear next Wednesday is a lot of time spent on the infrastructure question. But it's a very...
I'm not taking the dollars out because I don't think we don't need them. I'm taking it out because I want to know from the engineering side. I agree, warrant the roads, but I'll tell you what, the first contractor that has a failing road because the design didn't function, he's going to go back to the designer and say, hey, I built the road with plans and specifications.
Right, you got this going
Exactly.
on. And so that's the whole design-build idea where you hire a contractor to do the complete reconstruction. You can't get a road warranty unless you have complete control from beginning to end over that road construction project. So there are only a handful of contractors in the country that can come in and do that kind of a big job. We've experimented with it on several projects. If you want to contact my office, I'm happy to have a further conversation with you on trends on where we're going on road warranty, new materials, and base and engineering.
We have a question in the back.
Mike Michalajak from KBAC. Senator Green, is probably for you. You live a life. We all live in a budget. And you seem to have done well in your life, your children. Can you teach the sausage makers how to budget money? It's all about budgets.
It is all about budgets. We came to office 2 years ago, and our budget was $1.8 billion over budget. And we cut it out. We live very, very, very tight to our budget. Is there some fluff in it now? Yeah, I believe there's some fluff in it, but not much. Because of the unemployment, our Medicaid has just gone out of sight. People that have run out of unemployment. And you can argue, what is the reason? Why did they? Is there not jobs? That's another picture. But there's a lot of people out here living without a job, without any health insurance, if you bought health insurance lately, you know what that costs? People can't afford it on a $4, $5, $6 an hour job. But the Medicaid part of our budget is just going crazy, and that's really what's killing us. The other one, as we talked about it, is corrections. 1/4 of our whole budget is spent on corrections. It's hard to imagine that, but we still believe that the administration has some more fat in that budget that we can cut. We still think there's some there. It's just a matter of finding it and getting it out of the administration and getting them to believe in it. There's been some things we've done on that. We've passed legislation to let one prison up north go private. I'm not sure privatization of prisons is the answer to our problems, but I do know the high cost of prisons is killing our budget. We talk about other things. If you're an ag person, during the Grand Home Administration, they almost obliterated the ag department, the smallest budget there is. In fact, started turning things over to people to inspect their own products for foodborne illness, which we made a change to that. And we've added some things back in there, but priorities of budgeting is trying to make changes from the way it was 8 years ago. And again, we've reduced a lot of money in the last 8 years, even getting to where we're at. But budgeting is a priority, and I've got to say, I really believe that we've done a pretty good job budgeting what we've got, spending what we got. We're still looking for fat, and we're still looking for places where we can cut, because our revenue's not going to be coming in this year that came in last year. So we've got to reduce some more budgeting, cutting them down, re-looking at some other things. But I really believe, looking at assessing the whole budget, there's not a lot of fat there. But we will cut some more out, I'll tell you that.
Okay. Question here.
Recently, Diane Hathaway resigned as Supreme Court judge. It's very recent. Any whispers who the governor might appoint her in place?
I don't.
Actually, she didn't resign, she retired.
Did you get that?
She wasn't.
All right. We have a question in the back.
State your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Ron Meter, and is there any news on the bridge, the international bridge? Is that going to be built or not built, or is it on hold?
I'll tell you, it's been taken out of our hands. I don't believe that there will be any money appropriated from the legislature for that, unless we're ordered by the courts to do it. There's some things that the governor is working on with some federal money. I'd be very surprised if we see any kind of a bridge in the next number of years. It's going to be tied up in court for a long time. Matty Maroon has vowed to fight it until he doesn't have any money left, and he's got a lot of money.
Ever build a bridge in Fort Huron?
All right.
Another one.
I have a quick question for Senator Green. Would you come up so you can ask your question? Senator, I wasn't able to attend the meeting where I'm sure that you guys talked about range work, and so far hasn't come up. And I'm just curious, and I'm sure many people here in this room are curious, I'll just be honest with you. I don't believe that it was because of you were afraid of a recall that you chose not to vote. Maybe, but there were plenty of gentlemen who were not afraid of a recall. And since you are going to be serving our district, I just wanted to get a little view into your mind as to why. And the reason that I'm curious is because the statistics and the numbers speak for themselves. And so I'm just curious, what would make you not want to vote for something that would be so beneficial and that you're putting yourself on the other side of the issue when it's, I mean, you say you're a Tea Party guy, so we're just curious.
Well, voting for right to work or not right to work is not a Tea Party. I'm not sure that it's a Tea Party issue.
Free market is a Tea Party issue.
I'm not, but I didn't say that I was afraid of a recall. I'd take on a recall whenever you want, but those in my caucus realized that there was going to be a whole bunch of recalls, and they wanted to stop the collateral damage.
So if it weren't for the recall, you would have voted yes? The threat of recall?
No, I don't think it was the threat. Probably, I guess.
Okay.
The money that would have been spent.
So do you agree that right to work is good for the state of Michigan?
Not 100%.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to know, you know. I'm sure we'll be working together in the future. All right, we got another question. I want to slip that in there. Here we go.
I would just like to thank Mr. Green for his stance on right to work. Be that in favor, we'll talk about that some other time. But what you were talking about the Ambassador Bridge, Man Maroon purchased the terminal I used to work at down on the Detroit River, where the actual site of the bridge is going to go across. So you're going to have, as you said, a hell of a long time before that bridge ever goes across that river. That's all I got to say.
Okay.
Let me just say one thing, just cover that up a little bit.
Right.
Please don't judge everything about Mike Green by one vote.
I don't know a lot about you.
Well, you'll find out. I mean, I'm not running right today. Okay, and I'll be back, and we can talk about some other stuff.
Okay. All right.
Gentlemen, I've got actually one of our regular people that come to meetings here, she was unable to, she actually emailed me the question. Yeah, in her email, she said she really is getting tired of seeing Jeffrey Feiger on the TV. And she's asking about tort reform. We could do something working towards tort reform for the coming year. Is that on the radar? Is that something that could be worked on?
We just passed a couple bills on medical malpractice reform, which were probably not the fanciest bills in the world, but it did go a long ways to help some of the folks on medical malpractice. That has not been one of our issues this term, has it? Not that we haven't had a lot of issues. And we're going to redo our ideas on what's going to happen in the next 2 years in a couple of weeks in the caucus, so undoubtedly that'll probably be on the list.
And who doesn't like Jeffrey Feiger? One of the things I told for is we're going to go back, and we weren't successful in the last 2 years of dealing with the catastrophic claims issue and reform to our auto insurance system. And just be assured that that conversation will probably start back up again when we look at auto rates. But the other thing, the flip side to auto rates is the tort reform and the frivolous lawsuits and the things that go along with that. And I know in the Senate we have a couple of attorneys that serve in the Senate that have a keen eye on this as well. But it's certainly it's a driver of so many different things. It's built into the cost of every vehicle and every product that you buy. And so, there's going to be opportunity to do a lot of work in that area.
In my America, that irritates the heck out of me when he comes out and says, in my America. No, we, just from an agriculture standpoint, we attempted to address a few of the tort reforms when it comes to equine issues and ag tourism. We weren't able to get those through. I expect those to come back up again. We really wanted to get those done. They actually shouldn't have been. They actually came into the Ag Committee, so there was a little bit of a flack because they thought they should have been in the Judiciary Committee. And they probably should have been, but we tried to get them through. In fact, I think we did pass the one through the House Committee, but they never let them up to the floor. So we do want to cover some of those issues, and those are a lot smaller in scale, but it needs to be covered all the way across the board.
All right, just one or two more questions here, probably. Right there in the back, and then if you can go, sir, back to Bill and ask your question next, that would be great.
Irene Nowak from Dryden. Thank you for your right to work vote. Obamacare, so many groups are exempt. I want to be exempt. What is going on?
Well, again, that's a federal issue. Unfortunately, we did, in fact, in my opinion, in the House, we're the ones that stopped the exchanges from happening in our state, and I think that's what we could do. I'm a firm believer we shouldn't be exempting anybody from these things. That's why I'm in favor of, I think that, we try to be fair and equitable. I think we've done a better job in the last 2 years than ever been done before. On all the types of issues we've done. The tax credits, I've never voted for tax credits. I don't like tax credits, or very seldom, I should say, because you're picking winners and losers. And I know there was a disagreement about whether the tax on seniors was fair or not. I think it was as fair as we could get. I think by the time it's finished, it will be fair and equal across the board. So, again, that's a federal issue. The exemptions were done at the federal level. I don't know that we can address that, other than try to stop it from happening in our state, which is what we're trying to do.
Question here.
I got a question regarding water. What do you know, or what are we doing to preserve the fresh water in the Great Lakes water basin, considering the global demand for water is projected and continuing to spike?
Right now, we're losing it all into the air. All the Great Lakes are down astronomical proportions. If we don't get some snow this winter, or some rain, we're going to have any beaches left. What are we doing to protect our water from going other places, I think? Is that your question? There is nothing on point that I'm aware of that's going to allow any state to steal our water. There is some legislation that we've dealt with. We dealt with it this year, and that's how you use the water that comes out of the ground, such as bottling facilities that bottle water and they take our water somewhere else. Because all the water that's used here in Michigan, it's all recycled. It doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it goes out in our whole world. There's only so much water, and it all gets recycled, and it all comes back into the ground. So to protect our Great Lakes, we have, I think, some pretty good laws protecting our Great Lakes from anybody stealing them, but we do have some problems. We had some problems with irrigation this summer. I'm not sure if you had problems here in Lapeer County. In the Thumb, farmers were pumping water like crazy and was running wells dry in their areas. We worked on some legislation to help that, not to mandate stopping of the irrigation, but more or less to regulate it and make sure farmers are more knowledgeable of their neighbors and irrigate a little bit more. So I don't know of anything that's going to steal our water from the Great Lakes.
Okay.
I was specifically also contamination, like whether it's fracking or injection wells, is, I know there's some of that happening. Are we addressing those issues and where that contamination is happening? Because I know we just signed leases to frack the entire state of Michigan, and that's probably at some point going to affect us. So, is that really a great idea?
Well, one of the things that we did in 2008, Michigan is one of the 8 states and 2 provinces with Canada that signed on the Great Lakes Water Compact. And when you take a look at regionally where the Great Lakes Basin is, we have all 8 states and both provinces all passed the very same legislation that limits and prohibits not only the withdrawal, but any diversion out of the Great Lakes Basin. So what was really interesting about that is every state, one state has veto authority of any water leaving the other side of our basin. So yes, it's built-in safeguards there. And, you know, and within that legislation, we're even regulating the pump head of the sprinkler system at the golf course. And one of the things that Michigan was a leader in is developing a tool to determine our quality streams and our cold water resources for the very first time in a very scientific way to be able to look at it. But we look at Great Lakes level. I live on the St. Clair River in that area down by Marine City. The docks are just, it looks like they're just jetties out into the lake. We're down several feet in our lakes. But it's a function of a lot of other factors, but it's not diversion.
Okay, did we have one more question there?
My name is David Loack from Dryden. We talked this evening about balancing budgets, but we also need to consider revenues and other revenue streams. And we can look no farther than the state of Ohio to the south of us. We can look states like Pennsylvania and North Dakota. And what I'm talking about is huge shale deposits. And I don't know what the state of Michigan is doing, but we have the potential here to really provide a lot of jobs for folks and revenue in this state by horizontal drilling. The concept of what happens with fracking in the water, we're now actually recycling the water in these various states too. Here's the point. I mean, if you look at the unemployment rate, even in Ohio, due to fracking and horizontal drilling, that's incredible. That's incredible revenues. Is the state of Michigan heavily regulating this so that the drillers won't come in? Now, historically, we've drilled oil and gas wells for decades in the state, if not more, 50 years. But we have the potential with the shale deposits to really provide a lot of work for people in this state. There's a lot of revenues, I think, and if we're regulating this, or these drillers are not coming in, I think that's something we need to consider. And fracking, we've been fracking for decades. The fracking is safe. The water issues, you got to read. You have to read the other side. I'm a geologist, okay? We have to look at both sides of this story. So my question to you is, are we regulating the drillers out of this state?
No, I don't think so. I think you'll find that in Michigan, we're fracking the daylights out of this state. And I'm serious. We have more natural gas in Michigan than almost any other state. And we can, if we was able to get that out, we can have our own energy and not have to rely on anybody else for our energy. And you will hear in the governor's State of the State coming up what his thoughts are on the energy and what we ought to do with fracking. I'm convinced, I'm not a geologist, I can only look at studies and read things. I'm not an expert on it. I'm convinced from what I've seen that all the fracking that goes on is so far below our water system, I personally don't believe it's having any effect on our water. I mean, we're talking about miles below our drinking water system. So no, we're not regulating. In fact, we're profiting. All the money from all that we're getting from that drilling, the state's royalty is going to the Natural Resources Trust Fund that's never had as much money in it as it is now. The Natural Resources Trust Fund is capped. Now all the money is spilling over to the State Park Fund, which is good because it's good for Michigan to be able to provide our visitors a nice place to camp in Michigan. And it's not coming out of tax dollars, it's coming out of that revenue.
Okay, all right, that's it for tonight, everybody. Thank you for your questions, and thank you, gentlemen, for your answers.